A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
We're coming back today to talk some more about the Jesus film. Not the one you may have seen 40 years ago, although it's still being used around the world for amazing outreaches. But there's a new version of the Jesus film, one that's costing something in the vicinity of $150 million. And it's still a year or two away from release, but the expectation from church leaders is just amazing as to what sort of tool this will put in the hands of Christian churches. Whether it's in children's ministries, youth ministries, or regular church services, the ability to outreach into your community. Well, let's welcome a couple of the representatives who are a part of Power to Change. Jeff Folland is the Australian National Director of Power to Change. Hey, Jeff, welcome along.
Thank you, Neil.
And it might be confusing, but another Jeff in the studio with us, Jeff Peters, is leading the global marketing for the new film. Jeff Peters, welcome back to 2020.
Thank you, Neil.
Jeff Folland, let me come to you. Australians and amazing tools to be used for outreach. Let me just ask you about what sort of preparation is needed over 2 years, because oftentimes when there's major events, major opportunities like this, there's a prayer foundation. Let me ask you about a prayer foundation for this new film.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I first heard about this film last year, and I had a long history with the previous, the 1979 version of the film, and so I thought that the time for this film had passed. But when I heard about this new animated version, I realized that with its global release, that it was going to create a cultural wave that was going to crash on the shores of Australia. And as the leader in Power to Change, I said, I've got two options. One, I can kind of put my hand up and say stop. Or secondly, I could turn the surfboard around and start swimming to try and catch the wave. And so that's what I've been trying to think about. What do we need to do to prepare the way for the film? And we know that in all major outreach, the most important foundation we can lay is the foundation of prayer. That if people are going to see the story of Jesus in a cinema, we need people to be spiritually prepared. And we need people who are going to be uniting in fervent prayer in preparation for the release of the film. And so that's our most important step.
You know, this film, the Jesus film, it's been used alongside major outreaches now for, you might even say, generations. In fact, for things like Billy Graham crusades. Jeff, from America, your thoughts here on the film and the alignments with major evangelism opportunities that's happened around the world?
You know, there's a great amount of energy we're seeing in many places around the world related to even just the year 2033. People are beginning to talk more and more about the 2000th anniversary of the Great Commission, so to speak. And we're hearing from so many ministry leaders about their major plans around that year. And so I don't think it's a mistake at all, or even a coincidence by any stretch. I think this is God's alignment that now is the time to bring this reimagined version of the Jesus film, this animated reimagining, out so that ministry leaders everywhere can take advantage of it. Ultimately, the film itself will be released in 100 languages and will quickly be in 2,100 languages, just in time for these 2033 events, and of course a whole lot happening even in advance of that.
Is it the case, Jeff Folland, that when you've got opportunities like this, that over these coming 9 or 10 years till 2033, that there's going to need to be the sort of quality that can reach a new generation? Because maybe what's 40 years old now doesn't cut it anymore. So, but reusing or repurposing something which is so powerful, that these sorts of things are going to need to happen more and more. It's not just this film, but a whole lot of other things as well.
That's right. And I think about the film that it's we can think about it as a film in the cinema, but we know that cinema is only one way that people consume films now, that we can watch clips on our phones. We can engage with it using virtual reality. We can engage with it with augmented reality. It's very difficult at the moment to travel to Israel. Most tours are shut down. This is going to have 3D sets that Bible colleges will be able to put on goggles and guide students through the sets to visit Capernaum. I had the privilege of visiting Capernaum a number of years ago, and as I watched the the set for this film, I thought that reminds me of what I saw when I was in Israel. But the most exciting thing for me when I think about this film is that it's about how do we mobilize everyday Christians to be able to engage with their communities. And, we have a responsibility as a Christian to reach out to the people around us. That's what Jesus has called us to do through the Great Commission. And I think there's a lot of Christians in Australia who feel defeated, who feel like they feel frustrated. They don't feel confident to reach out, and they haven't seen a lot of fruit. But if you think about any business person, anyone who's in their work role, if they've been asked to do a role that they haven't been trained for, if they haven't been equipped for, then no wonder they feel frustrated. They feel like they're ineffective. They don't feel like it's something they should do. And so I think one of the great things we should be doing in preparation for this launch is actually engaging in how do we equip everyday Christians to be able to share their faith in an effective way.
There's an equipping process that happens as well. Jeff Peters, while we're talking about the Australian context and the encouragement for Australian Christian leaders to see this opportunity and to embrace it and be part of prayer campaigns and all sorts of things that will be preparing and equipping people for a harvest, let me ask you what's happening around the world, because we're just one nation and perhaps population-wise one of the less and smaller population nations. Give us some insights into what's happening around the world with the uptake of this new film.
It's been tremendous, honestly, to see the momentum already beginning to grow in various pockets around the world. There are something close to 30 to 33 nations that are really becoming a top priority for this. As we are in Australia now, speaking to you, there are people planning for an event at the end of this month, which will be in Egypt, bringing together ministry leaders from both Egypt and Pakistan. We've got meetings happening to plan for the film release in Mexico and Brazil at the same time, and even a joint meeting of ministry leaders from Russia and Switzerland that is going to be convening in Serbia. So there is a whole lot of momentum happening because there is a lot of ground to cover over the next couple of years before this film is released.
Are we likely to see an increase in the 8 billion views that have seen the original movie? Because now that it's available in such a diverse range of formats on lots of different platforms, that 8 billion might actually not look as impressive. I mean, 8 billion in itself is, the mind boggles, but the potential for people seeing either excerpts or the whole film or the spin-off opportunities from this, aren't they much bigger than even 8 billion?
Oh, absolutely. Incredibly so. And to the point of what Jeff mentioned earlier, even imagining people using the three-dimensional sets for Bible studies, for discipleship programs, for so many other possible applications, we have no clue now what God may want to do 4 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. What we do know is that the way people consume media today is not going to be how we consume media 5 years or 10 years from now. At the same time, we know God remains present and active in all of it. So what does he want to do? And how does he want to rally all of us and all of this new opportunity to help more people know of his great work in the world?
Well, you've been in Australia and you've met a lot of Australians in capital cities around Australia, and you've been here to make friends, to encourage those leaders to participate in what is going to be a huge opportunity with an amazing film. If I come back to you, Jeff Folland, over the times ahead, you want people to connect with you because you're going to be running initiatives. We mentioned the prayer initiative and how you can be equipping people. You'll want people to connect with your organisation. Tell people what will be the reason why you want them to visit their website and perhaps register their name, register their church. What's important about that?
Well, I think for me, it is about how do we mobilise everyday Christians. And through visiting jesus.film/au, then they can register an interest and receive some advice on how to run an event. They can receive some links in how to get some training. At a recent pastors' conference I attended, a pastors' conference where I would say the majority came from great churches. But we did a survey and only 10% of the pastors said that they had run evangelism training in their church in the last 12 months. It's like, how do we equip more people How can we expect people to do something that we're not equipping them for? And so with Power to Change, we run a great evangelism training course called My Friends. It's just a way of helping them think about how do they love, pray, care, and share with their friends. And so they can look up powertochange.org.au and search for My Friends and click on and express an interest there. And we will provide them with training in how to equip their people.
And Jeff, just connect listeners who are thinking, Power to Change. I'm not quite so familiar with the name. Of course, it's been around for a while now, but a lot of people will remember Campus Crusade for Christ. Give us your insights here into the Australian connection to this worldwide mission, which is one of the biggest mission movements, or perhaps the biggest mission movement in the world.
That's right. Well, we changed our name back in 2016 when the US ministry changed their name from Campus Crusade, and we changed our name from Campus Crusade to Power to Change in Australia. And we found that word, that name, Power to Change, represents the gospel. The gospel is the power to change. And so as part of an organization that has a presence in over 180 countries around the world, we find that we're all seeking to make disciples, and we're learning from each other effective ways on how to make disciples. Last April, I was at a conference where we were talking about church planting, and we had 300 leaders from 100 countries, and our global vice president by the name of Bekele, he's no Ethiopian, stood up and announced that in the calendar year 2022, our ministry had directly planted 26,500 churches. I was like, that number boggles my mind as an Australian.
And with a resource that can help that happen, not only in Australia and around the world, with a new film, a development on what was the most significant and effective evangelistic outreach perhaps in the history of the world, the Jesus film. And a new version of that is coming out next year and the year after. There's some development and there's some equipping and there's some participation that needs to happen, and Australians an opportunity to be able to connect in with this new Jesus film. And with all of the spin-offs and opportunities and ministry availability that this is going to have for children's and youth programs, exciting times ahead. Here's the website for you to connect with the Jesus film, jesus.film/au. jesus.film/au. It's a project of Power to Change. And in Australia, you'll be able to connect with Jeff Folland. Jeff is the Australian National Director of Power to Change. It's been also a pleasure having Jeff Peters in the studio with us, leading the global marketing for the new film. That website, jesus.film/au, to be a part of this new technologically advanced animation of the Jesus film that's coming out in this next couple of years. First of all, to Jeff Peters, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Neil.
And Jeff Folland, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.